Hello everyone, we are from Group 9, consists of 7 members. This week, we are going to study two topics from B5 and B6 about writing in early modern English and the development of American English. So let's start the presentation.
Hello, my name is Madinda Swandani and my last student number is 012. So I'm going to explain about the introduction first, writing in early modern English. Hauger in 1996 considered the issue of how dialects develop into languages. In considering this issue, he is effectively also considering the development of vernaculars into standard varieties. Haugen suggests there are four stages to the development of a standard. These are, first, selection of norm. In the Middle English period, four varieties of English emerged as potential standard forms. There are Central Midland Standard, Early London English, and Century Standard. And then the second one is codification of form. During the norms of the selected form are made explicit, usually by the production of printed materials and especially through grammars and dictionaries. The third one, elaboration of function. This means that the newly emerging standard must be adequate for a variety of purposes, like various classes of people and by different communities, and variety of different functions. And then the last one is acceptance by the community. It must be seen to be a viable and useful form that offers something to its users, be this power, prestige of the opportunity for social and educational advancement. Next, we are going to enter to the first topic. It's orthography in early modern English. Over the early modern period, however, spelling convention gradually become established, and these orthographic norms mean that early modern English spelling is not as haphazard as it may at first appear to be. Common features of spelling at the beginning of the early modern period. First, there are two forms of the letter S in use. The practice is to use S when the final letter of a word is sometimes called long S when the letter is word initial or appears in medial position. The second one is U can represent both the vowel sound can and the consonant sound V. Third, V can also represent both the vowel sound and the consonant sound V. Fourth, I tends to be used in places where in PDE we would use I. According to Barber, the letter combination I as in the versifying was the only instance in which the letter I would be used. In the early modern period, final E in words like name, monster, and persona would not have been pronounced in speech, but fulfilled a number of different functions in writing.
Next will be explained by me. My name is Cinta Sakni, my last student number is 015. Some grammatical characteristic. There are pronouns and verb in this grammatical characteristic. The first one is pronouns. Pronouns in present-day English take different form depending on a number of factors. The form of the pronouns depends on whether it is the subject or object of a sentence or whether it is fulfilling a possessive function. And the other factor that determine the form of a pronouns are person, like first, second, and third person, and number, whether it is singular or plural. The form of the pronoun changes according to its grammatical function. We can take a look at the table of pronouns in early modern English. There are some differences between early modern English and present-day English pronouns. For example, at the beginning of the early modern period, it was usual for the masculine singular possessive pronoun his to be used in those instances where in present-day English we will use its. The main differences between pronouns in early modern English and present-day English, however, it is second person form. In early modern English, as in Middle English, The second person pronouns change form according to person, number, and grammatical function. For example, thou, thee, thine are singular form, whereas ye, you, and yours are plural form. In the present-day Standard English, there is no distinction between singular and plural form, and only the possessive form is different from the others. The second person form also had a particular social meaning in early modern English. During the early modern period, thou and thee, ye and you were marked for social status, and when used in this way, ye and you could be applied as singular pronouns too. A person of higher social standing could address a person lower down the social hierarchy with either thou or thee and expect ye or you in response. Since using ye and you show a differential awareness of that person's higher social status. Ye and you was a more polite form. And in many languages, still make a similar distinction and have second person form that are marked for politeness, though nowadays the factors that determine their usage is usually a person's age rather than their social class. For example, in France, the form tu and vos. Tu may be used between friends as marker of social solidarity, while vos is likely to be used by a young person speaking to someone older than themselves.
Thank you for the time. My name is Fitria Damayanti and my last student number is 020. Here I would like to continue the presentation about some grammatical characteristics. The number 2 is verbs. Throughout the development of English, there has been a tendency towards regularization. During Middle English, inflections began to fall out of usage, but it is a mistake if we assume that inflections were not being used anymore. Actually, present-day English verbs still inflect in the third person present tense. In the early modern English, verbs have a greater degree of inflectional complexity than present-day English verbs. Early modern English included an inflection to mark the second person singular form the verb in both the present and past tense, and these rules not survive in present-day English. Inflections varied according to dialect. This rule still survive in present-day English. For example, the third person "ut" was a short in inflections, while the north of England, the third person present tense inflection was "s". Berber suggests that around 16th, the north and third person inflection was considered less formal than its southern counterpart. Although the two third-person inflections denoted the same grammatical information, they conveyed different pragmatic information, the same way that early modern English second-person pronoun thou and you conveyed different social implications. The inflections in the second-person singular form no longer have in PDA. The process of regularization affected many of the strong verbs in early modern English, and they regularized over time to become weak verbs. Thank you.
The next subtopic is about expanding the lexicon. It will be explained by me, Rumanatul Alania. In this subtopic, we will discuss about how vocabulary in early modern English period were expanded. So as we have learned before, in Old English period, it was through compounding. So compounding is putting existing words together to form new words, while in Middle English period, it was through borrowing words from Latin and French. And in early modern English period, there was a disagreement among scholars on way of enlarging the lexicon in English. So the disagreement here is about the appropriateness of expanding English vocabulary by borrowing words from classical languages such as Latin and Greek. So at the time, there were two different opinions about expanding English language by borrowing words from classical languages. First is from Sir Thomas Eliot. He stated that he agreed with borrowing words from Latin and Greek, and it could enrich the English vocabulary at the time. While the other scholars or writers, they didn't agree with that, and they stated that it was better to use simple Germanic vocabulary as the loanwords from Latin and Greek were so complex. So there's two different opinions about expanding the vocabulary in early modern English period by borrowing words from the classical languages led to a controversy known as the Inkhorn controversy. So in this controversy, the writers who scorn or disagree with the borrowing words from the classical languages describe the loanwords from Latin and Greek as Inkhorn terms. So the Inkhorn terms here is a disparaging phrase showing that the terms was a scholarly affectations. During this controversy, there was a Cambridge scholar named Sir John Cheke. So he objected the practice of borrowing classical vocabulary and was against the use of Inkhorn terms, and he wrote a letter in 1557. He stated that he neither agreed with the practice of borrowing from the classical languages such as Latin and Greek, neither he was pro with the use of Inkhorn terms by the writers who scorn the languages. So there are some Inkhorn terms which is now a common word such as audacious, celebrate, clemency, compatible, contemplate, expectation, hereditary, insane, and promotions. So from these Inkhorn terms, we know that these present-day English words were derived from the early modern English period by borrowing words from the classical languages such as Latin and Greek.
My name is Tasha Namira, and I'm going to present the next slide about causes of linguistic development in the American colonies. The first one is the origin of settlers came from the various areas such as Gloucestershire, Somerset, Lincolnshire, Nottinghamshire, Essex, and Kent. Early British settlers is drawn from lower and middle classes in Britain. The consequences of British settlers is English that was initially spoken in America included many regional dialect features are opposed to being solely a form of standard English. There are some factors that would have caused the development of English in earliest American colonies. The first one is numerical majority. This is the dialect of colonies that most likely to survive and develop into American English. Number two is prestige. This is the linguistic form used by community leaders, viewed as prestigious and adopted into American English. And number three is the lack of contact with Britain. The influence of British English was reduced over time as a result of diminishing contact between the settlers and their homeland. The experience of colonial life affect the development of American English. The contact between English and the other language is important part in the development of American English. Dutch, Spanish, French, and German are the languages of other immigrant groups, and it is a language and dialects that come into contact with English.
Well, my name is Vidya Tumila. My last number is 029. Now I'm going to continue our discussion about a developing standard. In previous topic explained that the British settlers in America were from lower and middle class. So it provides more spoken language rather than written language that determined the development of standard form of American English. And the American standard form image was not as socially charge, but it most likely because the social hierarchy of Britain had not been transplanted to the American colonies. Dunn claims that in general, English in the US is most uniform in the domain of syntax and most variable in pronunciation. And Dillard put this down to dialect leveling, which is a process by which the characteristic features of dialect are gradually lost as dialect converge. Converge is speakers accommodate their language use to become more like other language users. This dialect leveling occurred from the beginning of the 70s until the last quarter of that century. Then, this rapid development because of schools wherein children would be exposed to accommodate their language use to that of their classmates. Even though in the end of the 70s, dialectal diversity became more commonplace to contact with frontier varieties spoken by immigrants from other countries.
Archaism in American English. It is sometimes claimed that a particular word, grammatical structure, or pronunciation in American English is archaic form of British English. Some linguistics variables that are commonly cited as being archaic but which still survive in original British dialects, such as from Macquart. The word drudges, used in England until 1750. It remained in American colonies, and it retained in some dialect of Scotland. In contemporary American English, such as Midwest or the East Coast. And then the word chemist. This word replacing drudges in British speaker, and the use is pharmacist. This word replacing chemist in some British dialect. So, if you are British speaker, which one would you prefer? And then the second is received pronunciation. The example is post-vocalic R. American English, such as New York, the word farm is pronounced as farm rather than farm. The same pronunciation of the word car, hire, poor, wire, harm, and the other words. According to Cassidy, vocalic R is no longer used in RP. In the early 17th century, it died out but remained in the American colonies. It is still common in particular regional varieties of British English such as Lancashire. Number 3 is from Buff and Cabell. The word mad, in American English, mad means angry. In present-day English, mad means someone who is mentally disturbed. The word mad in some British dialects, such as Yorkshire English, means angry. So, which one do you prefer to show the meaning of mad?
So, in the beginnings of African American culture, or AAE, African American culture is another variety of contemporary American English. AAE developed from the varieties spoken by the African slaves who were brought to work on plantations in the early 17th century. There are different opinions about the origin of AAE, whether from the dialect of the early European settlers in America or from Creoles. Creoles have been explained in previous chapter that Creoles developed from pigeons. First view is the first African slaves to arrive in America brought with them West Indian Creoles or Jamaican Creole, which were adapted and developed into AAE. The alternative view of this is that AAE is a development from southern dialects of the plantation owners. And finally, Creole's hypothesis has been questioned, and it has been suggested that AAE may have developed in the same way as North American dialects, and that its developments in the 12th century that have led to its becoming significantly different from present-day so-called white vernacular. Well, that's all about writing in early modern English and the development of American English. And we are sorry if there are any mistakes and lack of material of what we have presented. And don't forget to write down your questions in the discussion forum. And thank you very much.